Hello and welcome to another episode of App Stories. I'm John Voorhees and I've got Federico Viticci with me. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good, good. I hear you're melting in Rome today. It's a little bit warm there, huh?
I am under the weather in the sense that I am under and there's the weather. I feel very weak. It's just that kind of humid,
oppressive
hot
heat.
weather.
Yeah.
41 degrees Celsius right now.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I had to go outside for a moment. I was like, I am gonna die on this balcony today if I stay outside.
How do your dogs take it when you go for walks?
Oh no, we had to completely switch our schedule.
Do you go out like early in the morning or late at night? Or
we're
what?
not early morning people. Although,
That's
here's
true.
a funny story. There should have probably been an unwind segment if it happened yesterday. This morning, this is App Stories, but hey, this is one of our summer episodes. We like to take, blow off some steam and talk about some random topics. So
Sure.
I was woken up at 8:20 a.m. and I know because I checked my watch. It was like 8:20. What's going on? By a really loud bang, really loud bang. And Ginger
8:20 is very early.
8:20, really loud bang, and Ginger was also scared. I was like, what's going on? Now, I know that there's construction happening upstairs. And I was like, what are they doing? Because they've been drilling, they've been sledgehammering. I was like, did they break something? Did they drop something? It felt like a really huge thunder, but it was sunny outside. And I checked my cameras. I was like, no, it's not raining.
Wow.
So I went back to sleep. Then I woke up an hour later because the dogs woke me up. Checked the news. There's been a huge explosion in Rome. A gas station exploded. Like
a gas station? Wow.
Thankfully, no victims, but essentially like an entire neighborhood has been engulfed in this fire. I don't know if it's on international news. It's all over the national news.
I have not looked at the news much yet today.
It's really
that's crazy.
It's crazy, and it's really quite. I mean, thankfully, not a tragedy in the sense that there's no victims, but there are like 35 to 40 people who have been severely burned. Now they're not. Thankfully, their lives are not at risk. It sounds like, but basically, this gas station caught on fire. The firemen and police were already there, and then the underground tank where the gas is obviously stored exploded. And there's been this huge mushroom cloud over this neighborhood of Rome. And the bang was so loud that it was also heard outside of Rome.
Wow.
And
how far is it from you? Do you know? Do you have any feel?
5 kilometers.
That's
just,
not close. Yeah, that's not close.
But my doorman told me he was already working and he felt the ground shake. Because obviously the underground gas tank exploded, right? So he thought that it was like some
earthquake or something.
An earthquake or like some huge pipe that bursted in our neighborhood. It was not in our neighborhood, but then he basically turned the corner and he saw the smoke come out like in the distance.
Right.
Yeah, it's been like all these apartments with their windows shattered. I saw a tennis course nearby with all the debris. The roof of the gas station was blown off and it flew 500 meters in the distance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it could have
500 meters?
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Half a kilometer from the gas station. It could have been much, much worse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So are there other buildings on fire in the area?
I think a building really close, but thankfully the fire department was already there, so they contained the fire primarily to the gas station. But some cars that were parked around the gas station, they obviously were destroyed.
Sure.
But it could have been so much worse.
Oh, yeah.
So I was woken up by that. And then I walked outside. I was like, "Nope, this is way too hot." This is why I'm trying to take it easy today.
I wonder if the weather had anything to do with it. Because sometimes
it didn't, but who knows?
Because sometimes when things get really hot, like tanks and pipes and other things have issues. The streets buckle. All kinds of things happen if the temperatures get really high. But all right, well, I'll have to check out the news later today. That's crazy. I'm glad to hear nobody got hurt. We should talk today, I think, about our fall reviews and I guess our overviews, which are probably just around the corner. We don't know when the public betas are coming out, but if history is any lesson, it'll be within the next couple of weeks or so. So we have overviews of the public betas that are in the works, as well as our fall reviews. And I don't know about you, but I feel like over the years, this process has become more and more compressed. There feels like there's less time to do these things over the summer. And I think, there was a time too when Apple would do, in particular, the macOS release would come anywhere from
good times.
a week to a week to a month after the iOS one. So I typically would have even more time than you would some years, but that seems to have changed so that everything is out on the same day. So I'm anticipating macOS comes out in mid-September, roughly, just like iOS, iPadOS, and the rest of them. But I thought we would talk a little bit today about, I guess, the meta parts of it, but also some of the tools that we're going to be using.
Yeah.
Because I think they're good tools to talk about for anybody doing a research project.
Yeah, I kind of want to share where my head's at the moment.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the upcoming public beta. So we're recording this on July 4th. Happy July 4th, John.
Yes.
Happy
Independence Day.
Independence Day. But realistically speaking, I think there's a pretty strong chance that, let's say in 10 days, we're going to have the public betas. I'm just eyeballing it based on
last year, and
last year, historical patterns, that sort of stuff. So let's say that in 10 days, we have the public beta. I feel like this year, more so than in previous years, I don't want to say that I'm struggling, because it's not that I'm struggling with understanding iOS 26. I just feel like what you mentioned, the time compression, is not really helping me right now get a sense of what it's actually like to live with iOS 26. I think right now I have a better sense of iPadOS 26 than I do with iOS 26. And let me explain why. Although I have switched to using a bunch of Apple apps, and those Apple apps obviously have the new liquid glass design, it's really challenging right now to get a sense of what third-party developers are going to do, because third-party developers are obviously taking their time with this major new design, right? I haven't seen any major third-party betas of third-party apps that have implemented Liquid Glass. Developers are still trying to understand Liquid Glass, and from what I hear, some of the APIs right now are really broken, and there's a lot of confusion in terms of how to draw these new Liquid Glass sheets, these popovers, and all these elements. So developers are taking their time. I have been using some Apple apps. I do have some thoughts, but I don't have a lot of examples to go by. And I feel like even with the examples that I have, this is what I want to hear from you, if it may be just me or if you also feel kind of the same way. I've been using iOS 26 for what? 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks right now.
Right.
And sure, it looks different, but I don't feel like it's fundamentally changing what my iPhone looks like. Not in the sense of like obviously visually it looks different, right?
Right.
But with the exception of top bars that are now minimized at the bottom, but like when you set aside the glass-like visual effect, your iPhone and iOS still looks like iOS.
The experience of using it is not very different.
Yeah. Okay.
Is how I would put it. And I feel kind of the same way about macOS, really. I mean, I think iPadOS is a different conversation because you've got the windowing and things like that, which really fundamentally changes how you use the device. But macOS is kind of the same way. If you don't go out of your way to go mess around with Control Center, modify your menu bar, or fiddle around with what's in Spotlight, you are just going to have kind of the same experience you always had in macOS, and probably even more so than iOS, because the liquid glass, while it's in there in macOS, it's a lot more subtle. I mean, it's the places you'll notice it are Safari, Finder, Music. There are a handful of places where, you have that kind of layered look with the toolbars and the sidebars. But beyond that, especially when you're using third-party apps, like you said, you're not going to notice it quite as much. And So I get where you're coming from. And the approach that I'm taking, I think, for the overview is I'm not going to talk a lot about the design because I feel like the design is going to change anyway. And it's going to just be kind of I'll call it out because you want people to know that here are the places you can look to kind of get a feel for what liquid glass is like. I mean, it's not that it won't be in there, but I don't think it's going to be in any way an in-depth discussion of it because I do feel like it's going to change a lot. Maybe not a lot, but it's going to change on all these platforms between now and the fall. For me, with macOS in particular, the thing that I think is most worth pointing out in an overview is Spotlight, the menu bar control center stuff, and the new apps, things like, Journal and the phone app, which is actually quite good. A bunch of little things like that. I really do feel like more so than almost ever, this is going to be less a here's everything summary as opposed to here are the things if you're interested in the public beta. Here's why you might want to install the public beta. Here are the highlights of what's in macOS, not here's a comprehensive list of everything that's in there. That will be for the review and it'll be more in depth and it'll be more of an analysis of what those things are.
Yeah. I feel like right now it's easier for me to talk about iPadOS for a whole bunch of reasons, like the windowing, the multitasking, obviously being able to record podcasts, which I did last week.
Right.
The menu bar, like there's a lot, like it's easier. It's always easier for me to talk about functionalities rather than visual changes. That's been a common thread throughout my whole career of writing about iOS.
I think design's very hard to write about.
Design is hard to write about because it's something that you got to use. It's something that you got to see in motion. I guess it's easier maybe for YouTubers than it is for writers. But also the problem with design right now, it's that, to me at least, you have that combination of two factors, which is, first, I don't think it's as groundbreaking or shocking as iOS 7 was back in the day. It's more subtle.
Although to listen to people online, you'd think it was like
no, I disagree.
Monumental, but it really isn't.
I disagree with that because your iPhone still looks like an iPhone. Like you have here's the thing: you have a new material. You don't fundamentally have a brand new shocking. I mean, I remember going from iOS 6 to iOS 7. It's one of those things like you had to be there. It was a shock. Right?
We went from buttons to links. I mean, that was a fundamental change.
To thin blue fonts. That's what happened.
Right.
Here, I mean, obviously, Apple has been progressively moving to this place. Like, it's not like sheets at the bottom are a new thing. It's not like Apple...
They've been around for like more than 5 years at this point with maps.
It's not like Apple trying to make buttons and UI elements as compact as possible or new. It's not like context menus are new. The material is new. There are new animations. Menus open up with a new animation. I think the biggest visual and functional change is the new top bar on the iPhone, like the way that it's collapsed, but then it can expand and it shows you all the top bar items. Search bars at the bottom, that's something I can write about. But so there's that combination, as I was saying, of like, it's not as shocking as iOS 7. And to me, it still feels unfinished. Like you can tell that Apple is continuing to tweak this thing. So I think right now, when it comes to the public preview, at least, I think I would probably take a more of a like, here's a preview of what the design is going to look like, but let me focus on the functional changes because this thing is pretty much a work in progress at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good approach. And, it is one of the things that I've learned over time, and it's more of a feel than anything else. It's hard because we have this compressed time frame, and we're at WWDC, and we do previews. I didn't do the Mac OS one, Nilian did, but we have a preview, then we have an overview during WWDC, which is just based on press releases and the video. Then we have this preview in July, which is kind of like first impressions, but it's a little deeper than that because we've been living with it for a few weeks. And then we have the full-on review. And I think the hard thing is balancing what you put in what. It's very easy to go overboard in July, when I think the thing about July is it should be a place where here are the highlights, here are the things that you have to be aware of because they might not work perfectly well and we think they might change. And, we'll see you in the fall for the rest of it.
Yeah. So That's we'll probably get developer beta 3 on Monday, if I were to guess.
So.
And again, if I were to guess, I would say developer beta 3 is going to be the public beta the following week, hopefully, because otherwise I won't have the time. So
I think we'll see it on Tuesday because Friday today is a holiday in the United States, right?
Yes.
My guess is it'll come Tuesday as a result of that.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, so there's going to be the public preview. Then we'll have, obviously, articles on Mac Stories. Then we're going to have 2 months, right? Roughly, for testing and preparing our reviews for the fall, which is why you wanted to talk about the tools for the research. Let me share what I've done so far. Very different from the past. Right now, I'm running this experiment, which can be undone at any moment.
Okay.
My previous system with Obsidian and my plugins is all in place. It's ready to go if I want to, but I'm trying.
You're in Notes.
I'm trying to do it all in Notes.
Of course you are.
Because of the Markdown export feature, because of a shortcut, actually a series of shortcuts that I've created to replicate my Obsidian setup. I have a folder called iOS and iPadOS 26. Inside of it, there are 2 subfolders. One is called Research. The other is called Chapters. Okay. In the Research folder, there's all my notes for the sessions. And those notes are sort of backlinking to the relevant chapters of the review. I have a placeholder table of contents in the Chapters folder with the chapters that I think I'm going to have in the review. In theory, no. In practice, I have a shortcut that replicates my Obsidian setup, exports the entire review in Markdown, and compiles the chapters into a single story. Okay. And in theory, I also have a shortcut that lets me see when let's say that I'm in the design chapter, and I want to see what are all the research notes that I took for the design chapter. Now in Obsidian, this is built in. You just scroll to the bottom and you see the backlinks.
Right.
In Notes, there's no backlink feature. I built my own. I think I actually shared this shortcut a couple of years ago on the club. It's called Notes, Notes Backlinks. It's broken at the moment in iOS and iPadOS 26. It says Notes backlinks cannot be run. I haven't done anything.
That's all it says, huh?
It's all it says. It doesn't even tell me which action is the problem. So
that's too bad.
We'll see, I guess. But again, this is just an experiment. I can, at any moment, thanks to the Markdown export feature, I can say, okay, look, Apple Notes, I tried, but I'm going to move back to Obsidian. The reason I did it, not just because of the Markdown, but because of the excellent Apple Intelligence integration in shortcuts. This is something that I think I will write about in the public preview and obviously more in depth in the fall. I have built a lot of shortcuts based on Apple Intelligence, mostly based on the use model action with ChatGPT instead of the Apple models, because the Apple models have a really small context window. But I have a lot of shortcuts that use the use model action to let me ask natural language questions about what I have in Apple Notes, what I have in Good Links, what I have in News Explorer. A common thread for me this summer will be, I think I mentioned this before, re-embracing native apps that have shortcuts integration because of this feature. The ability to be able to say, like, I have a shortcut, John. I have a shortcut. Called Good Links Auto Tagger.
Oh, that's nice.
It runs with a bunch of different triggers, and it uses AI and natural language to get my list of tags from Good Links. And anytime it finds an untagged article, it picks the best tag for the story. So I don't have to manually tag things anymore. Or I have another that I just can fire up, and it asks me, what do you want to read? And I'm like, I don't know, give me stuff about liquid glass. And it finds stories about liquid glass. So
that's cool.
That's going to be a story for me this summer, like actually trying to make Apple Intelligence useful.
Let me ask you this. Are you satisfied with the models you have as your options?
No.
Okay. I was going to say, because compare it to like Gemini or Claude, Opus or something, it's pretty rudimentary.
But with some hand-holding, And with ChatGPT, not with the Apple models, you can get a lot done in shortcuts.
Okay. So, all right. I looked at News Explorer recently too, because I saw that you had it on your home screen. And the first nope for me on that one is that it uses iCloud for syncing.
You know what though? It's really fast. I gotta say,
Is it?
It's really fast. It's really fast. It's like has to be one of the best iCloud syncs I've ever tried. I don't know what.
It has no syncing with services.
No,
because I use Feedbin myself.
Apple devices only. That's a pretty big downside, but it's really well done. I gotta say.
Yeah, no, it's a great looking app. I mean, I've just had bad experiences every time I've tried to use iCloud for RSS and on other apps, not News Explorer itself. So maybe I should give it another shot. Just to give a quick overview of what I'm doing, it's similar to the past years. I'm going to use Obsidian, and it's pretty straightforward. I have a folder called macOS Tahoe. I collect my research notes in there, which are individual notes on different topics, different categories, which is roughly aligned with the chapters. And then when I get down to writing, I'll just start putting together. I usually use a single note, Federico. I don't do the thing that you do. But what I do is I write it all in, and I use folding. So I've got, do some folding there to try to keep things compact. I've been using a little bit more Copilot, which is an AI integration in Obsidian. I've found that has been a really good resource to do things like once I have a big set of notes, I can go through and do things like ask it to create a checklist of all the topics to make sure that I can go through and make sure I haven't missed any detail that I had in my notes. I've also been using NotebookLM. I took all of the transcripts from the session videos at WWDC that I was interested in. I divided them up into like 5 categories of topics, fed them into NotebookLM, and then generated audio, fake podcasts and briefing documents and things like that, not as a replacement to watching the videos themselves, but as kind of a reinforcement mechanism where I can start off kind of easing myself in with an overview of the topics and then get further in the details as I go, because sometimes diving right into one of those videos is, throwing yourself into the deep end. And I find having those overviews just useful for when I'm doing things like going out for a walk and I've got a 20-minute audio clip that I can listen to about metal, for instance, and get an idea of what it's all about before I dig in more deeply. I think this year I'm going to use ScreenFloat for a lot of my screenshots because ScreenFloat has a lot of great integrations for organizing screenshots. You can do things like tag them, put them in folders, all kinds of things like that. And while I think it's always a mistake to take screenshots too early in the review process, it does help, especially since design is a big part of this year's story on all the platforms, to have those screenshots. And even if you don't use them, tag them to the beta they're associated with and start having something as you can go back to and refer to without having to dive into a particular app. So I'm going to be using ScreenFloat to keep me up to speed on that. And the other thing I've been doing too, as a way of dealing with the design stuff, is I have a loaner Mac Mini that I keep on my desk, and I can hook it up to a second screen right next to my Mac Studio display, and I can run Sequoia on that side by side with Tahoe, which is just a nice way to say, oh, is this really, what's the difference between this toolbar and that toolbar, or this element and that element? So that's the kind of thing I'll be doing. I guess the last thing would be that I've been using Preview on iPadOS 26 to read some PDFs. PDFs have always been part of the process of getting ready for the review season, and this year's no different. And Preview is not that different from what you could do before, but I'm using Preview and kind of exploring what some of the differences are this year with that.
Nice. Yeah. I like the idea of ScreenFloat, I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice because it's got both the menu bar app. It's like CleanShot, but it's got more of an organization layer on top of it, whereas something like CleanShot X is more of a just taking screenshots tool. ScreenFlow allows me to pin things and put them and organize them into folders and tags and all that kind of stuff. So that's a nice element of it. So
I put iPadOS 26 on my iPad mini.
Oh, I saw you posted something about this, didn't you?
It is surprisingly fun and capable, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously kind of ridiculous, but the moment you try it, not as an iPad, but as a big iPhone with lots of iPhone-sized windows happening all at once, it's perfect for tiling those windows.
Oh, I bet.
You can make, a bunch of columns on an iPad mini. It's like having 3 iPhone apps, horizontal, obviously. I think this is also something that I will share in the public preview. It's like, it's an iPad, but it's like this completely different flavor of iPad, which I think is fascinating, right? How multitasking can sort of be graded on a curve, so to speak. Like you have this super small iPad, and the same multitasking looks one way, is useful for certain things, but the same engine looks completely different on a 13-inch iPad Pro, and it's the same feature. I think it's an interesting story there. The kind of stuff that you don't have on iPhone, because, iPhones, you don't multitask. It always looks the same. You just get a taller screen, basically. So yeah, that'll be interesting. I did not expect the iPad mini to be fun with iPadOS 26 at all, honestly.
Yeah, it's a preview of what a foldable phone might look like, I would think. So there's that aspect of it too. Which minis does it work with? Does it only work with the most recent iPad mini, or does it go back to the one before
I don't remember.
I haven't tried it on my mini. I don't have the most recent mini. I have the one from before that, but I may have to give that a try myself.
Well, John, you've also been doing some other things that I think you want to talk about in AppStories Plus.
I
In the post-show.
I do. It's a little bit of automation experimentation. I had one of those moments where I got deep down the rabbit hole on a topic and spent an entire evening setting up some automation things. So I'll walk through that in the Pro Show.
All right.
Everybody, that is it for today. You can find the two of us over at macstories.net, and we are on social media. Just look for @Viticci, that's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.